Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Japan once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel quite a few times before. Now, these guys are another relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves during their short lifetime so far. And if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're probably best known for their different kinds of IPAs, the New England Hazies, but also for the sour IPAs. We've had some really good sour IPAs from these guys. In recent times though, they have been diversifying a little bit and brewing quite a few different styles, which has been really interesting to see. So I'm curious to see what they are going to do going forward, but definitely one of the Japanese breweries that you really need to check out at this point in time, in my opinion. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have tried from this brewery before, one that I know they can do very well, and this is one of their latest releases here in Hong Kong, and it's also somewhat of a special occasion beer for this brewery as well. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Japan like I said. We're going to go to the Tokyo area, out to the west of the city to a little place called Okutama, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Vertere. So this particular beer is simply called 9th Anniversary Hazy IPA. It comes in at 8.5% ABV, and from the name I think you can gather what style this one is. But yeah, this is one of a couple of beers that they released for their 9th anniversary. We reviewed the 8th anniversary Red Double IPA last year. So when I saw this one, I thought, you know, let's do something a wee bit different. But this year, they did have a red single IPA. But this beer I bought from the wonderful Gur Beer in the one mall in Tsim Sha Tsui in Kowloon here in Hong Kong. And they seem to get the Vertere stuff quite regularly, which of course I'm very happy about. But yeah, definitely cool to return to Vertere, one of the Japanese breweries I really do recommend that you check out if you get the chance, and I do hope that I can go to Okutama at some stage and visit their tap room and film there. That would be awesome. I really want to do that. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. Always nice to review some Japanese beers for you here on Rampant Lion Reviews. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Vertere before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things, and do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on at the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to the brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Vertere once again. So Vertere, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in a little town called Okutama in the western part of Tokyo Prefecture, which you'll find about 1.5 hours by train from central Tokyo. So the two men behind this company are Hikaru Suzuki and Kage Tsujinogi, who is the brewer. But apparently the two men had dreamed of starting a company together since they were high school classmates. So Kage worked in a brew pub called Koenji, and he spent 3 years learning to brew there and also started perfecting some of his own recipes. But the company was started in a 70-year-old traditional house about 30 seconds from the front of Okutama Station, and apparently it took them over 6 months to renovate the house and get it ready to host their restaurant and brewery. So they started off with just 3 taps back in 2015, but they soon upgraded the system to 10, and all of those are of course now occupied by their own beers. The brewing takes place apparently in a small hut of about 7.5 square metres behind the restaurant and bar counter, and at the moment they have 2 brew kits, one 500 litre and one 1000 litre, but they've been gradually expanding their fermentation capacity over the last couple of years. In 2018, they also started cultivating their own hops in a field about 20 minutes drive away from the house, and they've been working to build up the harvest every year. They started canning their beers in 2019. The first cans were released in the September of that year, and over the last few years, they've just been kind of working to sort of stabilize the business, if you like, and build up their sales and build up their distribution in Japan. These guys are still a pretty small operation in the grand scheme of things, but yeah, they have been focusing a little bit more on just, you know, perfecting recipes and doing different styles and things like that. I'm not sure actually how much expansion they've done of the brewery over the last little while, but I do hope I can get out there and visit. Like I said, one of the other really cool things about this brewery is that they seem to really value nature, but that is of course an inherent part of the Japanese culture with the Buddhist influences and the Shinto religion and things like that too. So many of the Vertere beers use the Latin names of different species of plants and insects and flowers and stuff like this. So yeah, a brewery that really kind of holds that dear, holds that connection to nature dear, which I think is pretty cool. That's one of the things I really love about Japanese culture. But yeah, as of March 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 130 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But yeah, that is everything I can tell you about Vertere for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and I'll tell you a wee bit about the beer itself. So as I mentioned earlier, this one comes in at 8.5% ABV. It's a New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. This one is hopped with Cascade. It didn't say whether it was New Zealand or American Cascade, but there's Riwaka in there, and also Nelson Sauvin. So Nelson Sauvin we know quite well. That is a 16% alpha acid hop, the New Zealand, classic New Zealand hop. It gives you that lovely kind of white, green, grapey, gooseberry sort of note, quite a little bit of piney resin as well if you use it in early edition hopping. Riwaka is quite an interesting one. It's about 6.5% alpha acid New Zealand hop once again. Gives you quite a little bit of grapefruit, but it's known for its kind of herbally and sort of floral zesty kind of character as well. Cascade, the classic American hop, you know, gives you that sort of peary and grapefruity type note. I love a bit of Cascade. I haven't had it too often in a New England IPA, come to think of it. But yeah, the only other thing to mention this one, it was flaked oats and flaked wheat and dextrose that was in this, and some of the Nelson Sauvin that's in this is hop keef as well, which is quite an interesting product, oil based if I'm not mistaken, but well, not oil based in that sense, but yeah, it's the hop oil product. But yeah, I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up there. I'm not sure where this building is meant to be. It looks a bit more American than Japanese, to be honest with you, but there you can see the artwork on this one, a wee bit different to what we've seen from Vertere in the past. But yeah, plain silver top on the can there. This one is a ½ litre. I actually can't remember what I paid for this one at Gerbier in all honesty. But yeah, probably a little bit more expensive than it would be in Japan. This would cost you maybe, I think this would cost you maybe 1,200-1,300 yen at a good beer shop in Japan, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think this one should be quite nice. Let's get it out into the glass there and see how we go. The 9th Anniversary Hazy Double IPA from the wonderful Vertere in Okutama, Tokyo Prefecture, Japan. So let's do this. That's it. So here we are. We've got maybe about 75% of this beer out and into the glass at the moment. So before the head disappears on this one, you can see that it's poured with about a finger of a frothy, I would say slightly cream coloured head there, but I will say that it's a really nice head on this one. You can see kind of medium sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid there, and it gets a little bit soapier the further up the head that you go, but it looks really, really nice. For me, the colour of this one is interesting too. It looks like a kind of mango juice. I would say. I always like comparing the appearance of these hazy IPAs to different fruit juices because that's really just what they remind me of. But yeah, looks good actually. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. As I say, a kind of nice bright yellow colour. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But you don't often have to care about that when it comes to the IPA family of beers. But yeah, the level of haze in this one, I have to say, is fairly impressive too. It's a bit more soupy and gloopy. It's maybe one of the soupiest and gloopiest IPAs I've seen from Japan actually. The only other one I can think of would be one of the ones from Himitsu that we had fairly recently. But yeah, the level of haze in these beers depends on oat content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use as well. But yeah, fair bit of opacity to this one. Pretty nice looking beer, I have to say. But all in all, appearance wise, there's nothing particularly surprising about this beer when you consider what style it is. It just looks pretty much as you would expect, in all honesty. So I think we've said everything we need to about that. Let's go on and have a little look at the aroma then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Oh, that smells nice, I have to say. That smells really damn good actually. Makes me wonder, are Vertere stepping their game up a little bit? Damn, that's impressive. I have to say, you know, the Vertere beers have always been nice, but I don't remember having one that had quite such a striking aroma, in honesty. It could be the Riwaka. I remember I always liked Riwaka as a hop, and it could be the Nelson Sauvin hop keef in this one. I've always, you know, Nelson Sauvin I love, but there's just something a bit. It seems like they've kind of gone up a level, Vertere, with this one. Yeah, that's really damn nice actually. Something very striking about the aroma here. Really lovely, big, oily, fruity character coming out of this one. The green component's nicely balanced, and you've got that lovely kind of bready backbone with this one. Dextrose, if I remember right, was in the malt base as well, so you get that slightly drier, bready note out of the beer. But all in all, it smells absolutely lovely, I have to say. So I'm going to say straight away, big thumbs up to Vertere in this one. But let's break the aroma down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So as I've explained in many of my New England Hazy reviews before, for me, there are 6 elements to think about when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of these beers. So yeah, you have the kind of rye lean and grainy side of things and the farmhousey yeasty type character. Those 2 elements are a little bit more common in New England brewed, New England IPAs, but as the style has moved to other places and evolved, we're talking more about wheaty bitiness, barley malt bread, oaty creaminess, and the sweeter side of things. This one comes across as being very nicely balanced with the between the barley malt, the wheat, and the oats, and the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really, really very nice actually. And as I say, it's got a little touch of dryness to it, but at the same time it smells very, very rich. So the backbone of this beer, you get that lovely, very fresh white bready bread crust coming out of this one. So yeah, that lovely, very fresh white bready bread crust in there. There's a wee touch of woodiness to it as well, some Jacob's cream cracker, and then yeah, you've got that a lot of breadiness to this one. Lovely, fresh, fluffy white bread. Yeah, lovely, fresh, fluffy white bread in there. Yeah, fresh, fluffy white bread. And it actually builds, there's a little touch of brown bready sweetness in there the more that you smell of it too. And you can smell it like a more dense, wheaty character to this one. I'd love to know where the wheat came from in this beer actually. I think it might be North American wheat that's in here, or maybe Australian, because the wheaty character is very, very smooth. Remember that European wheat is a little bit more kind of bitey, whereas North American and Australian wheat tends to be a little bit smoother. European oats are a bit more creamy, of course. North American oats tend to be a little bit more porridgey. I'm not overly sure how we would describe the Australian oats generally speaking, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, we take the aroma in a little bit more deeply. There is a wee bit of wheaty brightness there at the back of the nose, which is making me doubt what I said before, but regardless, it's very nice. And the sort of more dense, wheaty, white bready character in this beer is very, very obvious. We can say that for sure. So yeah, barley malt white bread is in there, the more dense wheaty white bread is in there. There is a little bit of oatiness to this one too, and the oats are a wee touch drier, I would say. This beer is pretty fresh. The guys at Gur told me this one is pretty damn fresh. And they tend to be at Gur actually as well. So yeah, the oaty notes in this one, there is a little bit of creaminess in there, but there's a wee bit of dryness too, which makes me think more American oats than European oats. So good mix of things in there. There's a little touch of like Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch, this one, and a wee bit of biscuit, but all of that is to be expected. So yeah, on the malty side of things, I think that's everything we need to say. But the yeasty side of this beer, what would we say about that? There's a little touch of a brown bready character to it. Yeah, so a little touch of brown bready note in there, but mostly like a fresh, fluffy white bread, a little bit of bread crust as well. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together is really quite nice. And yeah, there's a wee touch of sweetness out of this one. Biscuit and Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch start to come to the fore as well, and at 8.5% you'd expect a little bit of that at least. But let's focus on the hoppy side of things with this beer then. The green component in this one's really nice and quite rich, and the fruity side of it's lovely as well. So yeah, for me, the green component in this one, you do get quite a little bit of like zesty, grassy character out of this, and some nice floral aromaticity as well. There's a wee bit of woody and herbally note to that green component as well, and that will be down to the presence of Rewaka. Rewaka is known for that herbally and kind of zesty, grassy kind of note. But yeah, remember with your IPAs, there are 3 ways to hop these beers. You've got early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness and a deep, dank green component. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the latter half hour of the wort boil. That gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that's all about flavour and aroma, and it gives you a very bright green component as well. West Coast IPAs tend to use all 3 types of hopping, which is why they're more oily and deep and dank in terms of their flavour, whereas the New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, which is why they're softer and more juicy. Yeah, and you can smell that in this one for sure. But let's round off our look at the aroma with a wee look at the fruity side of things. So yeah, fruity side of the beer for me, I would say this one, it's got a good little bit of it's got a good little bit of, there's a wee touch of that grapefruity note in there from the Rewaka, but the fruity character in this one, and you know, the Cascade, we have to remember the Cascade is going to contribute to that as well. Does it have that wee bit of, there's a wee bit of that oily sultana type note that Rewaka, that Cascade can give you as well, sorry. But yeah, this one really leans toward that white, green, grapey Nelson Sauvin type note, and it's quite oily. I think the Hop Keef variant of Nelson Sauvin is really giving you that lovely big oily note in there, and there's some nice zesty lime to this one too. So yeah, the way that everything pieces together in this beer, I have to say, is really nice, and this is definitely one of the most striking aromas, potentially the most striking aroma that I've had from Vertere in the couple of years that I've been enjoying their beers. So as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beers, of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it's now time to have a go at this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the 9th Anniversary Hazy double IPA from the wonderful Vertere in Okutama, Tokyo Prefecture over in Japan. Happy anniversary to the guys at Vertere. Omedetou gozaimasu, as we should say. Let's get stuck into this. 8.5% New England Hazy double IPA, Rewaka, Nelson Soviet and Cascade. Slanja, Skol, cheers, Kampai. Ooh. I tell you something, this one's really interesting because it's very, very good, but it's quite different in terms of, this is one of these ones where the way the flavours come out is quite different compared to what you would expect from the aroma. I suspected this was going to be quite a wheaty, bitey and kind of floral New England double IPA, but it's actually very, very smooth and very kind of oaty leaning. There's a lot more oat to this one, and I'm guessing that's maybe the it could be the dextrose as well, come to think of it, but the smoothness and kind of thickness and creaminess that you get out of this beer is pretty damn impressive, I have to say that about it. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that particular regard. But yeah, this is a really damn good one from Vertere actually. So if you get the chance to try this, do it. Very, very good beer. And it goes to show you now, a lot of the breweries in Japan, when the craft beer scene was kicking off, there were ones that were owned by Japanese, but the ones, when I think about it, Mino, Isakadoya, and who's the other one? Shiga Kogen. That's the one I was looking for. Like, those guys have always done some really, really solid stuff as Japanese-owned breweries. But yeah, I think what's happening now is that the Japanese are going out and exploring more and bringing back more of these different flavours to Japan and being more successful in recreating them. And yeah, Vertere are one of the breweries who are really, really getting good with that. But this is lovely. This is potentially the best beer I've had from these guys so far. At least the best IPA. The stout that I had a few videos ago from them was really good as well. So yeah, Vertere is stepping up their game quite a bit. But yeah, lovely, very smooth, oaty leaning New England double IPA, this one. So let's break it down and describe the flavour for you more in depth, as we always do. Middle third of your palate, you've got that lovely, fresh, white bready, bread crusty backbone in there, which I really like. If you move further forward on that, you get a little touch of like woody character in there, and then yeah, there's a wee bit of like Jacob's cream cracker sitting on top of that as well. So yeah, these are typical things you'll find in the backbone of one of these New England IPAs. So yeah, above the cracker, there's maybe a very, very slight layer, very small layer of like a more wholemeal, brown bready type character in there, and you get the cracker and the brown bread further into the aftertaste with this beer, which yeah, I do quite like. That comes out a wee bit more. But on top of that, you get a more fluffy, white bready character as well. So you can feel the barley malt white bread in there. So that is really nice, and yeah, the way that goes together is really nice and really fluffy. And it gives you a little bit of sweetness into the aftertaste too, but you do get that slight dryness out of it, which I think is really interesting. Yeah, so for me, the fluffy white bread, the barley malt bread in there is really nice, but then above that you get a really nice dense wheaty white bread as well. So yeah, lovely dense wheaty white bread in there, and then yeah, the dense wheaty white bread on top of that is really it's really nice. So dense wheaty white bread, and it gets a little bit bitier further back on the palate, but a bit smoother further forward. Remember, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So you've got that barley malt white bread, which gives you a wee bit of sweetness, then the more dense and smooth wheaty white bread in there. Then above that, you start to get the oats. And like I say, I was surprised at how oat forward this beer was compared to the aroma. But yeah, as you go down the middle line of your tongue, you feel that really nice kind of oaty creaminess there, and it gets very slightly dry toward the edges of your palate there. As I've often said, the oaty side of things in New England IPAs can usually give you a rough indicator of how fresh the beer is. This one is very fresh because you've only got a very slight oaty dryness toward the sides of your palate there. Basically, the fresher a New England IPA is, the smoother and more creamy the oaty characters are, but the older it is, the drier they'll get. In the dead centre of your palate though, there's that little circle there where you get the kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy notes out of the beer, the alcohol basically. So there's a little tiny bit of that in the dead centre of your palate here, and it's just surrounded by a little touch of like McVitie's digestive biscuit or something like that. But this beer really doesn't have very much in the way of a sweet component to it. I suspect this one is simply like wheat and oats and a bit of barley malt. I wouldn't think there's any real sweet variety of malt in this one because it's very smooth. But I think that covers the middle third of the palate in this beer. It's really quite impressive, this one, I have to say, and quite different to what I've had in this style category in recent times. I've been trying a fair few of these recently, actually. So yeah, let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I've often said, the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, but just at different intensities. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there, the wee touch of brown bread underneath, the barley malt white bread in the middle, then the more dense wheaty character on top. The base of that back third of your palate, you can feel the white bready bread crust, the Jacob's cream crackers in there, the brown bready characters above that. It feels a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. Then you have the white bready character, the barley malt white bready character above that, then the more dense wheaty white bready note there, which has a little bit of bite to it, in honesty. And then yeah, above that you've got the more yeasty characters coming out of this one. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer, I think, is quite nice as well. So yeah, let's focus on that. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer for me, at its core, it's got a more, at the core, it's got a bit more of a kind of sweet wholemeal brown bready character. Then around the edge, it's like a more sweet white bready note, and around the very edge, it's kind of like a sort of floury bread crust. You know, if you take the bread straight out the baker and it's just got that wee bit of flour left on it, that's kind of what the very edge of the yeasty character in this beer is like. But definitely, yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, I like that about this one, that's for sure. Yeah, interesting stuff. So on the hoppy, I think that covers the malty and yeasty side of the beer. So on the hoppy side of things then, for me, green component of this one's quite interesting. In the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little touch of earthiness in there, and as you move further forward, it gives you a little bit of a woody herbally sort of thing. That's the riwaka, definitely. But then yeah, there's maybe a wee tiny touch of pine resin in there too, and as you reach the front corners of the palate, there's just a little touch of floral aromatic spice, and round the front curve of the tongue, it's a wee bit lighter and more grassy. But I would point out the green component in this beer is very smooth, and I think that's the hop keef, the kind of oil hop oil product in this one that's really smoothing that whole thing out. But let's focus finally on the front third of your palate and the fruity side of things with this beer. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get that bit of bready build up. Brown bread, barley malt, white bread, then the more dense wheaty sort of thing. The base of that front third of your palate is more of a kind of fresh, more of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust. And yeah, you've got that fresh white bready bread crust in there. And then above that, you get the more Jacob's cream cracker, the brown bread, the white bread, the more dense wheat, and a bit of the smooth oat as well. Then you've got that really nice oaty creaminess that's coming out of the beer. So yeah, I do like how all of that pieces together actually. So yeah, fruity side of the beer for me is really, it's very much Nelson Sauvin, this one. There's a few other little elements in there. The grapefruit, there's maybe a tiny little hint of grapefruit further back on that front third of your tongue in that oily bubble where the fruity esters come out. So yeah, there's a tiny little hint of grapefruit there. As you move further forward from that, it's got a little bit more of a, it has got a little bit more of a kind of slightly sultana type note, and maybe a little touch of like dry pear as well. But yeah, the front half of that front third of your palate is all about that white, green, grapey kind of gooseberry note that you would expect of Nelson Sauvin. There's maybe a tiny little hint of a zesty lime behind the very front tip of the tongue. But yeah, this beer is all about the Nelson Sauvin, and yeah, it's pretty damn good actually. So yeah, I think we've said everything we need about the flavour in this one. Let's round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this is again quite different to the other Japanese beers that I've had in recent times. So yeah, what would we say? The fruity side of the overall mouthfeel in this one, I want to say top end of mid-body, but I'm also tempted to say bottom end of full-bodied as well. It's one of the thicker New Englands I've come across over the last wee while. Carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. It's got a lovely mix of like creaminess and dryness to it, I would say. But yeah, the hoppy side of things in this one, I would say, I think it's maybe 20 or 25 IBUs in this one. This one's quite, it feels like it's quite low IBU, but in fairness, you do get a little bit of lingering bitterness there, so it could be 30, but it doesn't feel like it's anywhere north of that. The malt base, as we say, it's a bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle, and then there's a kind of creaminess on top. Very, very little sweetness to this one actually. The more that I drink of it, the less convinced I become of what I said earlier about the sweetness in this beer. And then yeah, you've got this lovely juicy kind of fruity character coming out of this one as well. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really, really quite nice. Very impressed with this one. This is potentially my favourite IPA that I've had from Vertere so far, and quite a fitting thing for their 9th anniversary. And I will admit, it makes me very curious to go back to the Gurt and potentially get the red IPA too. So you might see that one appear on the channel, you might not. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This has been really interesting to try. So this was the 9th Anniversary Hazy Double IPA, 8.5% ABV from the wonderful Vertere in Okutama, Tokyo Prefecture over in Japan. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Vertere as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. But until then, Slàinte, skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out Vertere's social media, and I'll see you guys later on. Ciao just now.